Welcome back. This is episode 10 of Big Riff Energy. Today I'm going to be discussing the making of Curse of Conception. This will probably end up getting split into 2 or 3 different episodes, but I'm going to touch on the interim between Chained to Oblivion and Curse of Conception. Now, before we start with that, I got a message from my good friend Philip at Century Media. I would describe his position as being the head honcho over there. This is in regards to the episode I made about the music biz. And I got Philip's permission to read it on the podcast because he said he enjoyed it, but he was just wishing that he could respond the whole time, which I totally get. Philip said, "I understand it's very easy to get cynical about the music industry. Even the best of people are there to make a living from it. Some few get very rich. Most of us have just regular jobs. Most of us work very hard. Real success stories are scarce, and in the metal rock world, success hardly ever comes overnight, but maybe after many years of constant battles. Still, it's my world. It is grueling sometimes. I still love it. Always have. I just need to keep everything in balance. Passion and business." I agree 100% with everything you said, Philip. I want to share an aside here. The last time I played Brooklyn with Gatecreeper was at Brooklyn Bazaar. This was the end of 2019. Also happens to be the last time I saw Trevor from Black Dahlia Murder. It was a really awesome night. It was one of my favorite shows I played with that band. And Fred from Dismember was doing sound for us that night. One of the nicest guys out there. And I had mentioned to him I was in talks with Century Media, and he gave Philip one of the most glowing, loving recommendations I've ever heard. He just kept stressing to me, like, that guy is one of the good guys. Like, he's played in bands, he gets it. And Fred was right. Philip, you're one of the good guys. I really respect you a lot. And I'm amazed at what you and Mike Getter have done with Century Media just in the past few years. It's been awesome, and I really respect you guys, and I appreciate the message. I totally agree with everything you're saying. It made me think back. You mentioned keeping everything in balance, passion and business, and it got me thinking about something I mentioned during that episode, which is a jumping off point where you make a decision, okay, this music thing has always just been my love, but it's never really been my career. And at some point, some of us have to make that decision. Let me see if I can do this as a career after all. And I in the past few days, have isolated the exact moment that happened for me. And it was at some point in 2017. I think we had recorded Curse of Conception. I don't know if it was released yet. And Gatecreeper had confirmed the tour with Power Trip and Cannibal Corpse. I was doing a lot of different stuff to pay the bills at that time. One of the things I was doing was Ubering on the campus of Arizona State University on the weekends. And I'll never forget, I picked up a couple of students and went to go pick up their buddy. And I remember pulling up to where he was. It's this drunk frat boy looking dude. And he threw a fistful of rocks at the side of my car. And his friends, to their credit, were kind of horrified. And he got in the car, and his friends were dead silent, and he was talking, but I think I had blacked out or something. And this is after I'm sober, so I'm not blacked out from any kind of substances. I was blacked out from pure rage and adrenaline. And I remember somebody talking, but my ears were just ringing and I wasn't able to understand anything they were saying. And I sat there for a while, and eventually everybody in the car got really uncomfortable. I think males can sense from other males when there's a massive explosion of adrenaline inside your body and hatred and rage. Because I've gotten out a lot of situations with dudes that could have whooped my ass because of that sort of thing. I think they could sense that it was like we're both going to get hurt and one of us might die. And that was the vibe in that car. I just remember being so insulted and disgusted by this dude, and the feelings subsided eventually, and his friends again were super uncomfortable. They probably also picked up on the fact that I had fantasized a million different ways of like pulling this guy's eyeball out of its socket or whatever. I mean, it just brought out some really brutal stuff that I carry around. And I took them to wherever they were going, but it was that moment that I was like, I'm never going to do this again. I'm never going to fucking take shit from a person like this, take disrespect from a person like this. And that was the moment I became determined to make the dreaded decision to combine passion and business. And like Philip said, it's a hard balance. I think it's difficult. Any job that involves any kind of passion or goal-oriented things, that sort of thing, it can be grueling and it can be hard on us. And I think this music thing or any sort of artistic endeavor that you're hoping to pay the bills with, it's especially brutal because so much of our self-worth is attached to it. As artists and people like Philip, I know that his sense of self-worth is attached to the success of the bands that he's signing and the success of the label. Nobody wants to fail, and it's particularly brutal when there's that added sense of self-worth that's attached to the way that you're trying to make a living. So we're all in it together, Philip. Thanks for the message. Now on the curse of conception subject, it's funny. I got a fan question from Aaron. A massive fan of yours and Spirit Adrift from Mexico. I met you a few years ago while you were touring with Gatecreeper alongside Necrot in Brooklyn. That's the exact show that I'm talking about, that I talked to Fred from Dismember. Again, crazy stuff, connections. I fell in love with Spirit Adrift and I love the evolution of every record. My question is, what do you attribute the most to the change from being a doom band to a heavy band with slight touches of doom? Again, Aaron, dude, you're tapped into the primal network or something, because I was going to talk about Curse of Conception. I think that's really the genesis of that transformation. And here you are bringing it up. So I think where we left off with the Chain to Oblivion discussion, I had talked about putting the full band together to start rehearsing to hopefully go play Roadburn, which didn't happen. I was still writing and demoing. 2016, 2016, the first EP came out in February. The full length came out in August, I think. And I'm pretty sure by the time that first full length came out, I had been working on songs that would end up on Curse of Conception. I remember at some point in 2016, I was driving Pallbearer on a tour with Baroness, and we were going from Phoenix to California. I remember distinctly. And I looked at Joe from Pallbearer and I was like, man, wouldn't it be fun and hilarious to not write a riff in the style of something, but to sort of write an album within the same framework as a really beloved album and do your own spin on it. But yeah, instead of trying to write a style of song, look at it as if you're trying to write a style of album. And I started looking at some of my favorite albums, and I realized that there was a thing in the 80s, this structure of an 8-song album, and two very beloved Metallica albums, Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets, have a certain structure within this 8-song idea. And so do the first two Ozzy solo albums. And I started noticing some similarities and parallels between the Metallica albums and the Ozzy albums. And I said, man, I think there's a formula in there, just as far as the dramatic arc of those albums from song 1 to song 8. And Metallica is known for taking pretty heavy influence from bands that they love. I don't see people talking about it a lot. People act like that you're supposed to be making music in some sort of artistic void where you don't have influences or anything like that. But all the best bands, you know, I saw a thing about Geddy Lee talking about what makes someone have a unique and cool style is having so many influences that you draw from, that you build up all these different influences that have affected you as a player and a songwriter until there's so many that it becomes this new thing, which is inherently you. Rick Rubin talks about it a lot too. He has said that he thinks it's kind of impossible to steal music from other people because you're hearing it as you, and then you're expressing it as you. So it's inevitably going to have some unique element of your personality. And I'll probably dedicate a whole entire episode to that concept. But the genesis of Curse of Conception was, man, these 12-minute songs that we've been playing, they're cool and they mean a lot to me, but I just thought it would be more fun to make some stuff that was a little more active and also a little more true to the first and most beloved influences that I had as a fan of music and as a guitar player and a songwriter and singer and everything. So I looked at this 8-track format, looked at the first 2 Ozzy records, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and that became sort of my guiding light, if you will. So let me write an 8-song album that's about that same running time if I can get it down to that, because Chain to Oblivion, the first record's like an hour long or something. So that became the goal, and it was a very natural thing. It was just this band or this project or whatever you want to call it has always been to please me first. And obviously I'm very grateful to the fans and other people that love it and appreciate it. But I feel like if I please myself, all the fans are going to be happy too. Clint Eastwood's talked a lot about that. All the artists I respect the most, they say you can't really get caught up with what other people think. You have to make something that you love first and foremost. And then if other people love it, great. If they don't, at least you're happy. And by proxy, you know, the taste that I have in music and the standards that I have for what I think a cool riff is or whatever, I feel like if I make myself happy, the people that like it are going to continue to like it. And that's proven to be the case so far. So I remember later that year, it must have been on the Cannibal Corpse tour in 2017, late 2017. Sorry, 2000. Was that 2016? I might be jacking up my dates. No, Skeleton Witch tour. Gatecreeper, Skeleton Witch, Iron Reagan, Oathbreaker, somebody else. I walked into a hotel room at some point on that tour. I think we're in Gainesville, Florida. And it was the first moment of silence that I had experienced in a really, really long time. And instantly in that silence, I had pretty much the whole song Earthbound, the first track from Curse of Conception. As I said, I already had some material accumulated by that point, but that song, I remember distinctly, emerged like in a flash in a hotel room in Gainesville, Florida. And I took my phone out, brought up the voice recorder, and hummed definitely the main riff and the chorus. And I had a song. I remember that specifically. I don't have that clear of memories of writing the other stuff. Since I started Spirit Adrift, I'm always writing. I write at home. I demo stuff at home. And it's constant. Now, the next major thing I remember is December 2016. My old buddy Sanford Parker was playing a show in Flagstaff, Arizona. And Sanford and I made a record in 2008. And I don't think I had seen him. So this is 8 years later. And reached out, got a hold of him, went up to see him in Flagstaff, and we caught up, and it was like a day had passed. And I started talking to him about this new project that I had, Adrift. And we started recounting memories of the recording session in 2008, which was a really good time, like really crazy good time. And the album that we made was good. And so I started thinking, man, I wish I could make this record with you, but I'm stuck in this deal at this label that I hate. And I was having major issues with the rat that ran the label. And my plan was kind of similar to the Dragged into Sunlight thing, where you just give them an unlistenable album full of bullshit and they're forced to put it out, and then you get out of the contract. But then I started thinking, man, that would be a huge mistake at this point in the band's trajectory. You know, we're getting some attention. So I wouldn't want to put out something really bad just to get out of the deal. Not that I'm above that. I just thought it wasn't the right strategic move. I think it's pretty brilliant in a lot of situations. At the same time, I didn't want to give this little rat a really good album. And I thought I had a really good album cooking. So Sanford and I kind of talked. I was like, man, maybe the next one, you know. And I remember specifically riding shotgun in the car with my wife one day, thinking about $20 spin and looking at stuff about $20 spin and just like, man, why am I not on that label? This is bullshit. I need to be on that label. That label's way cooler. And so I just did it. I don't know exactly how to explain what I did, other than at this point I had put a lot of work into myself as far as my anger and my resentment towards the world and my self-destructive tendencies and my violent, hateful tendencies and the rage and all of that sort of stuff. But I tapped into that. I tapped into it, and it involved just becoming as much of a menace and a nuisance as I possibly could. This was all warranted, by the way. I don't want to get into the details of what was going on, but just believe me, I don't resort to that kind of stuff unless it's really warranted and deserved. And in this particular instance, it involved finding people's home addresses and that sort of thing. There were no laws broken. I'm really well versed on the lines that you don't want to cross if you're trying to not catch some kind of terroristic threatening charge or something like that. But I just became a menace. I became a menace, and I made it more of a nuisance and a nightmare to deal with me and the band in a contractual setting than it would be just to release Adrift. So that's what happened. I got released from the contract just by being a lunatic, basically. So, and you can do it too. If you're having problems, send me your question at BIGRIFFENERGY@gmail.com, and I can walk you through it. Getting out of a record contract without copping any kind of charges. So I did that. Fast forward to January 2017. Now I'm on the right timeline here. Gatecreeper had gone to Tampa, Florida to play FYA Fest. So this was like January 7th, 2017. I had emailed Dave at $20 Spin about working with the band, but I hadn't heard from him yet. I think I had emailed him in 2016. Gatecreeper plays our set early January 2017. I walk out into the streets of fine Ybor City with all the cocks running around, chickens, and checked my phone, and there's an email back from Dave, $20 Spin. He said, yeah, I'd definitely be interested in putting that out. And I was ecstatic. As soon as we got home, at this point, there was a live lineup. We hadn't yet played a show, but we were jamming. It was me on guitar and vocals, Chase from Gatecreeper on bass, Marcus Bryant on drums, and Jeff Owens from Goya and Secret Iris now on guitar and backing vocals. We'd been jamming. I believe we had worked up a couple of the new songs that ended up on Curse of Conception. As soon as we got back to Phoenix, we bolted into the practice space. Marcus's drums were set up. Jeff had an interface and some microphones and stuff like that. He had been doing some recording at that point. So we rallied the troops. It was like a real vibe of everything was a team effort at that point. It was a really exciting time in the band. Just felt everything clicking. And we mic'd up the drum kit. I threw down drums real quick to the demos. I don't think that we had worked on any of those songs together other than maybe Earthbound and Spectral Savior at that point. So just knocked out some bullshit drums real quick on the demos that I had. Put them in an email, sent them to Dave. He said, yeah, this is great. I'll put it out, which I couldn't believe. The drums were so shitty. They sounded good, but it was just, I hadn't played really since we tracked the first album. So they were just not that great. But fortunately, he could hear the potential. And that was it. We commenced to working up those songs. I think we worked up Starless Age for the live set. And eventually we played the instrumental. I believe it Psycho Vegas was the first appearance of that one, maybe. So that was January 2017. We recorded the album sometime in May, in June, maybe. Our first show, I have the flyer here. May 15th, 2017. I have these binders behind me too. They're all like different colors. And each binder represents a Spirit Adrift release. This is the Curse of Conception binder. And it has like the tabs and lyrics and different press that we got around that time. All kinds of different stuff that's connected to that album. It also has a $20 spin recording contract, which we signed in the parking lot of the Rebel Lounge on May 15th. What a time. Gatecreeper was on tour, pretty sure, with Paul Bearer. And I remember we played a couple shows in Texas, and I actually flew from one of those Texas shows back to Phoenix so I could practice with Marcus and Jeff. And then the rest of the guys caught up, and Spirit Adrift played its first show. Crazy. I look back at 2016 through 2019, and sometimes I wonder how we did that. It seems like we had to have clones of ourselves or some way of teleporting or something, but we made it work. It was crazy, crazy times. I'm telling you, when I made that decision that this music thing is what I'm going to do for a living, and I'm either going to pull it off or I'm going to fucking die trying, I went all in, man. All in, harder than I've ever gone all in on anything else. And so far, it's still sort of working. So we recorded Curse of Conception at some point after that. I saw a photo on my phone that said May 2017 of me in the studio, but I don't know how that would work. Somebody, you can look up the Gatecreeper dates. And anyway, that summer we recorded Curse of Conception. There's quite a bit of confusion about that being a full band. So the way it was recorded, I played drums on 6 songs. Marcus played drums on 1 song, To Fly on Broken Wings. And then we split Starless Age. I played the first half and he played the second half because I just knew he could do a better job. We didn't have much time to prepare, or I would have just had Marcus play on the whole thing. So we thought it would make more sense to just allow him to focus on these certain parts, and I would play these songs that I already kind of had down. I played bass. Jeff played guitar on 2 or 3 songs, contributed to a couple riffs, little licks here and there. And obviously I did the vocals. And I in the physical release, we're presented as a full band because that was the vibe. We wanted to tour, we wanted to play shows. This thing that I wasn't even sure what it was had become really important to me at this point, and it looked more and more every day as a legitimate means to go out and do the damn thing and climb the ladder, as I had attempted so many times before with so many other bands. So we presented it as a full band, and that was the vibe. You know, my attitude towards recording and anything really has always been, how much do you want to do? How much do you want to contribute? How much do you want to participate? Once there were other people involved, I never looked at it as some kind of tyrant or anything like that. It's always been an open invitation. If you want to play on this and you think you can, let's do it. And out of efficiency and different things on subsequent releases, it just so happened that I would usually handle all the guitars and bass, or most of the guitars, and on Curse played 6 songs on the drums. And honestly, I think the drumming was better on my part on the previous album, just because I had put way more work into tightening up my drum skills. I think there's way more interesting stuff on Chained to Oblivion. Marcus did a fine job, but I think my drumming's probably better on Chained to Oblivion. And I'm going to keep it real. I think that Curse of Conception is the most overrated Spirit Adrift album. And I think a lot of that has to do with it has the coolest album artwork. Joe Patagno, I mean, it's very rare that you have a concept in your mind that you have to relay to another person, and that person translates that into whatever their medium is and presents it back to you, and you say, holy shit, that's exactly what I wanted, and it's actually even better. It's a better version of what I was imagining. Joe Patagno did that with Curse of Conception. It might be, I don't have anything to do with it really, so I feel like I can speak objectively. That might be my favorite album cover ever. I mean, it's like everything I want in a metal album cover. I think it really represents the themes and the music and the tone and the vibe and everything. That being said, I think the cover art made people like that album and more than they should, and think it's better than they should. There's something very special and endearing about it. I'll give it that. It's really the subject matter that I was tackling on that album lyrically and that I was trying to represent musically is really, really heavy and raw and real. It's really addressing the heaviest, most impactful stuff that I've ever dealt with in my life. And you guys think I talk all openly about everything. There's stuff that I address on these albums that I don't talk about to anybody, really, let alone publicly. Out of respect for my family, out of respect for myself, my own privacy. So if you think you've got it all figured out and that it's all out there in the open, because I am honest about all this stuff and I speak pretty openly, there's stuff that I keep, believe me. And out of any of the albums, I think what Curse does have going for it is the emotions that were being exercised on that album are really raw and real. But as far as the music and the production and the vocals especially, it might be, in my opinion, our weakest album, which is funny because it like blew the doors off when it came out. It was getting on all these year-end lists and everything else. And so has everything else we put out, fortunately, which I'm grateful for. Maybe it was the element of surprise too, because it was quite a shift from the earlier material. So I'm going to stop talking about Curse for now. That's kind of the lead up from Chain to Oblivion into Curse. I think on part 2 of this, I can talk a little more about the actual recording process, what happened after we played our first show, and all of that kind of stuff. There's another fan question from Quinn. Quinn says, love the Death Won't Stop Me single. I've listened through the Spirit Adrift discography a few times over the years, and I'm always impressed by your growth as a vocalist throughout. Can you talk about what things you've done to hone that part of your music? Have you had any coaching? Do you have any sort of practice regimen or warm-ups? Caught you the last 2 times you were in Indianapolis. Hope to catch you next time. Well, we're coming back soon with Midnight. I forgot to mention, we announced that tour. So yeah, we'll be back in Indy in May. Thanks for the kind words. That's a huge part of the reason I think our subsequent releases since Curse are way better, is just the improvement in my vocals. I've been learning on the job this whole time. Most people, when they start bands, they've done a lot of preparation and practicing and this and that. That wasn't the case with any of this. I just started going, just kind of like this podcast. It's just like, okay, got some songs. My vocals could be a lot better, but I'm not getting any younger. Let's do it. I was in choir growing up, but a lot of that stuff I sort of had to unlearn singing rock music. The breathing and figuring out how the different mechanisms work, that proved to be really useful. Breath control and stuff like that. But most of the other stuff, like the big round vowels and stuff like that, I've sort of had to unlearn. There are remnants of that on the early Spirit Adrift material. I almost sound British. I just wasn't confident in my voice. It's not really even my voice on those albums, which when I see people that say they prefer that stuff, I'm like, damn, that wasn't even really me. So yeah, just singing in bands, just experience is a major factor. Playing guitar and singing at the same time when you've slept for 3 hours and been in a van for 7 hours, you kind of just have to do that over and over and over. That's really the only way to get used to it. I do have warm-ups I like to do. This guy, Crazy Ken Tamplin, a lot of you probably know who that is. It's a lot of fun, goofball. He's really good about getting your throat going and really opening up everything and getting the mechanisms working tonally. Another favorite guy is this dude, Eric Arsenault, I think from New Orleans. And he's great with breathing and breath control and engaging your diaphragm and loosening up your muscles and that sort of thing. More of just kind of an all-encompassing functional workout for singing of any variety. Kenny's more of a rock guy, obviously. Got almost a Dr. Roxo vibe, if you will. But those two guys are very important in my improvement as a vocalist. I actually had a brief chat with Eric Arsenault on Instagram a while ago. It was really cool. I just was able to thank him because I've made a lot of strides for sure. And that's, songwriting and stuff like that is subjective. But there are ways to objectively improve as a musician or as a vocalist. And I definitely have, and I'm proud of it. And it took a lot of work and a lot of just doing it. And also focusing. When I was a kid, I was completely obsessed with guitar. And I looked at vocals almost as a secondary thing. I'm like, who cares? My favorite guys were like Jimi Hendrix and people like that. And I'm like, who gives a shit about Jimi Hendrix's voice? Listen to him play guitar. He's a great singer too, though. I kind of failed to connect the dots there. He's an incredible singer. So at some point after I started Spirit Adrift, I started to look at vocals more as a priority and a primary focus of my practicing and that sort of thing. And I got obsessed with it, just like how I got obsessed with guitar when I was a kid. And turns out if you obsess over something and practice a lot and work really hard, you get better at it. Who would have thought? So I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, I listening back to Curse, the songs are good. I understand why people like it. I think it's a really cohesive piece of art. The cover art is incredible. I'm really proud of the lyrics, proud of the songwriting, but I think the performances are lacking. I think especially with the vocals. I listen back to it now and I just can't believe that people like hearing those vocals. I can't believe it. I think we're so much better now in every possible way, but that's just me. So a record today that I'm going to talk about, this is Twilight Ritual by Deadbird. This, any of these Curse of Conception episodes, I'm going to talk about a record that was instrumental as an influence for that material. Master of Puppets was a huge deal. The first couple Ozzy records, Boston first record, all kinds of stuff. But I think what's really represented on Curse is my Arkansas experiences. The experiences I had personally and musically. And the number one Obi-Wan Kenobi Jedi master figure that I've had in my life is Chuck Schaff from Deadbird. Probably wouldn't be here still if it weren't for that guy. I would have moved on to other things. He taught me so many valuable lessons about just being in a band and being an artist and being a musician and loving it and making sure that you have an encyclopedic knowledge and appreciation of everything that's going into your craft. They recorded this album when I was living right by Chuck, really, right around the corner. Paul Bearer recorded their debut album around that same time. I was in another band called Sinking South in Arkansas that recorded something I'm really still proud of, all at Chuck's studio. Twilight Ritual was recorded there. As you can see, John Baisley from Baroness did the artwork. Deadbird and Baroness had done some touring together. Crushing, man. Deadbird is one of the best bands ever. I was going to say in this style, but just ever. It's sludge, but it's got a very emotional component to it that a lot of sludge doesn't. Maybe attribute that to their love of Sunny Day Real Estate. There's a lot of His Hero's Gone influence just in the weight and the agony of it. And I can attest that it's as legitimate as it gets. All the emotions represented on this album, as legitimate as it gets. I was listening to Twilight Ritual a ton when I was working on Curse of Conception. And unfortunately, I'm going to share this publicly. I should have been listening to the first record more, because of all the riffs that I've intentionally tried to sort of pay tribute to and repurpose and do my own version of, the worst and most egregious lift that I've ever done is a Deadbird riff on the first album. And if you listen to their first album, The Head and the Heart, and you listen to Curse of Conception, you will hear it. Believe me. I remember writing the riff and thinking, God damn, that's good. Wow. And it's kind of a left field turn in the song that it's in. It's in Graveside Invocation. And I just couldn't, I'm like, God damn it. That is so familiar. It has to already exist. And I was listening to Sabbath and all this different stuff, listening to this album, trying to figure it out. And I just couldn't put my finger on it. And then I was driving through Arkansas later on a tour, listening to the first Deadbird record, and the riff happened, and I screamed in the van, screamed, and texted Chuck and was just like, dude, I'm so sorry. And fortunately, these guys are some of the best dudes out there, and everything's all good. We had a laugh about it. I'm going to have to start splitting these 30-cent royalties with Chuck. So yeah, there's a lesson there, man. There hasn't been any new music since the 16th century or so. And some of the things that I've gotten called out on the worst, as far as, man, this really sounds like that. Sometimes it's shit I haven't even ever heard, you know? Whereas I'll intentionally kind of be like, ooh, I want to write a riff kind of like a Tony Iommi, something from the Tony Martin era. And I'll sort of like do my version of that. And nobody says shit. But then I'll write something that I think is super original, and somebody's like, oh, that sounds like Dismember, this song. I'm like, I love Dismember, but I haven't even heard that song. So you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. But I got to put respect on Deadbird. I did pay tribute to them intentionally on Curse of Conception with To Fly on Broken Wings. I mean, even the title is a nod to Deadbird, you know. But thanks for being cool about that, Chuck. And that's it, man. I'll do a part 2 on Curse of Conception for sure. In the meantime, write me, BigRiffEnergy@gmail.com. Like and subscribe. Share this with a friend that you think would dig it. And come see us on tour with Midnight and Spite-er. What a great band name. Can't wait, man. I've been listening to Midnight since the first album. And yeah, it's going to be fun. We got a lot of stuff in the works. So I'll see you next episode. Thanks.